to this computer. All right, well, welcome to another episode of Adapt, Attack, and Advance. I am Michael Braddock, and this is episode number 11. I am thrilled to have a good friend and business owner, Mark Said. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. Good to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Mark, if you would, let's dive right into it. Hopefully you've had a chance to listen to a couple of the shows. And if not, it's really 4 parts. We're going to talk about first who you are, so that way it gives some context as to who you are, what your business is, and the business sector that you're involved in. Second part is going to be the adapting portion, kind of a pivot. Third portion will be attacking the problem mentally, and actually what are you doing physically to attack the problem. And fourth and last will be what are you doing to advance during these times. So thanks so much for being on, Mark.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. So again, my name is Mark Said. I am the owner of MSS Pharmaceutical Consulting. And my role for the past 20 plus years has been in the clinical research world industry. The development and research of various drugs that are out on the market now. I've gone independent since April of 2013. So I've been doing this on my own for about close to 7 years now.
Okay.
Starting up in New York, I was working at the hospital level, patient-to-patient contact, working with them, and so forth. Moving from that level to the pharmaceutical side and the contract research organizations, such as like a PPD, which we have in Wilmington, that is more of the quality and development side of the drug process. And it's been a wonderful journey going through learning the steps from the pharma side, from the patient side, and then doing it independently, where I can kind of meld my own needs and the client's needs to where I can satisfy everyone and make it my own approach to research.
Okay. Well, as far as so that's very interesting. So this COVID-19 is probably an interesting thing that you're going to have a lot of info to kind of share on. I'm assuming, or at least kind of give your take on it from that standpoint. Maybe not from the direct virus itself, but just kind of how the medical community is sort of adapting to this, I would imagine, right?
Correct. I could speak to definitely the research side of it, where there is some research going on. There's approximately 60 preclinical trials going on right now. And preclinical meaning that it's still in the lab. It still hasn't come out into subject trials working on human. There are approximately 5 global trials on human subjects right now. Now, saying that there's a trial for a drug is a little bit ambiguous, because a clinical study or a drug takes approximately 10 years from the compound to actually being allowed to be sold on the market. So saying that there's trials out there is a little bit of false sense of security of where we are with the development and then the business side of selling and prescribing those drugs to a patient that is ailing from a disease or a condition. So yes, so there's the phase 1s where there's the 4 major phases of clinical studies. There's the phase 1s where you have a smaller study. They're relatively healthy subjects, and they are working in a capacity of let me get to this. They're working in a capacity of finding out what is the best dosage for these patients. You may have some that are going too high, too low. They want to ensure that we are giving the the best dosage for those patients without going overboard or too little, too much, and so forth. So we're looking for the side effects as well, and those can last several months. You have phase twos, which can last from several months to 2 years, and those are also looking for the best dosage to work for the patients, but they're working specifically for the patients that have that specific disease or condition that they're focusing on for that particular drug. And that could be about, say, 100 patients to get that best statistical background on it.
Okay.
Then you go into the bigger phases, which is phase three. Phase three can go from 300 subjects to a couple of thousand subjects, and they're all specifically for that particular disease or condition. And they've already narrowed down the dosages for that particular drug and for that particular disease. And that could last a couple of years, maybe up to 4 years in the treatment phase. Those particular trials also are comparison, where they'll take your drug, the new investigational drug, and compare it to the standard of care. What is commonly out there, and see which one's better, which one provides better endpoints, whether it be in oncology survival. Unfortunately, sometimes oncology, there's a terminal endpoint. The point for some of these is to see how quality of life improves, or the lessen the side effects from one drug to another. So there's a lot of that data. There's a lot of testing and quality information and interviews with the patients, interview with the investigators, which are your physicians, at various locations around the country, around the world, to gather that information, compile it, present it to the FDA if it's favorable, and move on to the next phase of marketing and potentially getting it out and actually helping subjects, helping sick patients with a new drug, a new combination, something that actually will prolong their lives or improve their lives in the grand scheme of things.
So interesting. So there would have to be a lot of things to occur, really, in any instance, but in this, for fast track is what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly. And since this is a seasonal condition, a seasonal disease, such as like the flu, those phases are definitely compressed. They won't take as many years or as many months to get through each phase, but they're definitely a lot more involved, a lot faster pace. But it's not going to be, okay, we've made a couple of studies, or we've made a study, we've reviewed 4 or 5 subjects over a course of a month, here's the results. We need more data. And
Sure.
There's always you have the argument, like, we want something that works fast. You have it working in a different country, or it's been anecdotally used for something else, and it's not been proven, but you have potential benefits of taking this particular medicine. Great. I'm all supportive of that, but we also have to be cautious about it as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about trying new things, but there's also that caution. What is the side effect for someone else? I mean, you could be ailing, you could be curing diabetes, but destroying their liver at the same time. So it's the pro and con to it, and weighing those balances to it.
Well, I appreciate you giving the full scale. Bringing it from point A to point B, and those various phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's dive in and start talking specifically about what are you doing in your business, because that helps create a lot of context as to who you are and what you do. So let's talk into adapting. What are you doing to adapt and pivot during this period of time?
So our industry as a whole has been slowly moving into the remote work and trying to avoid doing the on-site management and compliance aspect of our work. Some sponsors have been reluctant. They want that hands-on on a more routine basis. Others are extremely remote. I work from my home office. and we review the data. We do teleconferences like this on a daily or every other day basis, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, it's obviously we're not allowed in hospitals at the present time. We deal with a lot of immunosuppressed patients, so the patients are not coming into the hospitals for treatments or getting additional medicines, being checked on a weekly basis as they're supposed to be. Lab work is not being done as routine as it should be, and that does raise some areas of concern. You have subjects or patients that have had a lot of liver issues or cardiac issues, cancer subjects that need to continually receive treatment. So there's a lot of steps that need to be put in place for their safety. Clinical research is a big deal. I mean, yes, we want the data, we want new drugs on the market, but patient safety is the priority. From my perspective, I have a setup here in my home office. Yes, I travel a lot for work. I'm at that airport somewhere in the country on a weekly basis. But we, as a whole, from our client's perspective, we do have to be very flexible. And from that flexibility is working with teleconferences, an abundance of emails, cell phone conversations, texting with our physicians. Where are we with this particular subject? Where are we with this development of this particular drug protocol? So there's a lot of communication, more so than usual. And I see this as definitely a crash course for those that have been reluctant in moving into this field, is definitely pushing them and say, you know what, it's you sink or swim. You have to adapt to the electronic aspect of this and ensure that you can maintain that level of management, that level of confidence in your work and your speaking abilities and your management of the number of studies that you are in charge of.
So with that being said, do you still have currently any clinical trials underway?
All my clinical trials are still ongoing. So globally, clinical trials have halted or slowed down in their enrollment. Now, those that have been ongoing and have subjects in treatment, still moving forward. Our oncology patients must get their treatment. Those that, and this all depends on the specific trial. I have a hemophilia study. They are ongoing as well, but because those subjects as well are immunosuppressed, they have taken a step back. We're instead of sending them to the hospitals to get lab work, we're sending them nurses to get their lab work while they're at home.
Okay.
So there's an adaptation, and we have to conform to the environment that we're working in. Mm-hmm. Yes, it changes the budgets a bit, and there's a lot of last-minute decisions to be made, but we have to ensure the patient safety is in place.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've covered a lot there, and you really covered both parts of the question and questions that I have. How you're having to pivot now that there's the face-to-face interaction has either completely eliminated or has been limited significantly. So let's dive into, unless there's anything you want to add in that portion about adapting, let's dive right into attacking from a mindset perspective, as well as the actions that you're taking. So how are you attacking the circumstances and challenges head on during this period?
So it's difficult to be from being one that is usually outgoing and going out to the airports, people watching, eating out a lot. Granted, there's a lot more family time. My days are a lot shorter in the office, and we were just flying a kite, my son and I, riding bikes, got the Peloton behind me in the morning, hit that. So we're trying to still stay active, change the outcome and the outlook on life. Yes, it's difficult to truly be trapped in Wilmington when everything is closed up on you, mm-hmm. and you can't go out anywhere. But it's a beautiful day. The weather has been fantastic. As of this afternoon, we had a nice storm this morning. Yeah. But in general, I mean, we went out to the beach. We took a drive to Riceville Beach. Yes, we couldn't go onto the beach, but it was beautiful just to drive and have the windows open, kind of look at look at the environment. Everyone was out running around on their bicycles. It was a beautiful Easter or Palm Sunday, depending on which group you're with.
Sure.
And yeah, so it was a beautiful day, a beautiful weekend, and we still live. We still have our families. This is temporary. This is not the new normal, but this is just temporary until we kind of get back to the real true normal of running our lives as normal. But it definitely does give you a sense of, we do need to slow down. We do need to kind of take into effect, okay, how do we talk to each other? How do we enjoy what we have at home, planting new plants, planting trees, flowers? There's a lot of that.
That's an interesting perspective. So you touched on something just a minute there, and I want to have you elaborate on a little bit more. So your perspective was pretty interesting, and there's been several people on the show thus far that have said the same thing from the standpoint of giving. This is an opportunity. Yeah, has business adjusted in some form, shape, or fashion? Absolutely, but it's also an opportunity to reevaluate some priorities. But then also you touched on this is not the new normal, and I think that's. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
So the new normal that we're hearing is that we have to continually be distant from each other, that we continually have to basically watch out how we behave from a medicinal perspective. If you are feeling ill and so forth, that you should lock yourself behind closed doors and protect those that are around you. I agree, yes, and to some degree, you want to ensure that you do not spread some sort of condition or disease. However, my thoughts are this can't go on as is. Humans need physical contact. They need to be congregated with others.
Mm-hmm.
So those aspects of life must come back to normal. Industries are dependent on that.
Right.
Flights on planes, and those are crammed sardine cans. They're not going to be changing their seating arrangements for this.
Right. Right.
So I see that, yes, folks who are definitely immunocompromised have various diseases and conditions that may be more susceptible to something like this, or the basic flu or a cold. They should take it upon themselves to do take extra precautions. And those that are not, if you are ill and you have a cold, use basic hygiene. Make sure you cover your nose, cough into your shoulder, your elbow, sneeze in. You use a napkin. So things like that, so you don't spread germs and you don't spread disease and so forth. I see a lot of folks with using gloves and masks all around town, but they're using their cell phones with their gloves, and they're touching things outside.
And they're touching the steering wheels, and then taking the gloves off, and then touching the steering wheels again.
And then putting the gloves, they're putting the phone with the glove to their face, and yes, you're not touching your face specifically, but you've touched everything else outside, and then touched your face with something else. So that cross-contamination is a big deal.
Sure. Well, this has been insightful thus far, and let's see here. I want to talk about you talked about it a little bit earlier about things with the family, planting of the plants, enjoying just the outdoors. But I want to talk to you a little bit about this because how are you preparing your mindset during these times? To not get sort of sucked into the fear and the chaos, looking at it from a critical thinking and a pragmatic standpoint. Any books, programs, exercise that you're doing that's keeping your head clear?
Being in this field and knowing disease and knowing the spread of microorganisms and viruses and so forth, I have a different perspective on this. I know. And this is, I'm trying not to be overconfident because I could be a carrier, who knows, from all the traveling that I've done. But it's important to not feed into the panic. Have a healthy and cautious outlook, and understand that tomorrow's another day. today we live, today this is the situation we live in, and so forth. Have I read any books? No. Have I been doing a lot of research online? Yes. I'm in groups for clinical research, and there's a lot of different studies out there, a lot of different conversation about all the different types of drugs, or whether it be hydrochlorox, the hydroxychloroquine, and this other one that they're working on in France. So there's a lot of education from that perspective. Being outside, I have a giant window next to my office, having that sunlight. I didn't realize how big of a deal being outside and getting that vitamin D was it's very enriching. Walking, we have a relatively new dog in the house, Moose, and he loves being outside and seeing everyone. So I've gotten a lot of walking involved with him, and watching the kids ride the bikes back and forth, flying kites. So yeah, we've been outside a lot. And that's great to be part of their lives and enjoy them, and not let them be, yes, they don't have school, but not them be fed with, what do we do tomorrow? How is this going to affect my grades? Am I going to have to repeat my grade next year? It's like, no, those kind of quell all that anxiety, and really have a calm outlook on, you know what, you're healthy. You have your friends here, you have your parents, you have your families. Just enjoy your life.
That's solid. And then you mentioned earlier about the Peloton. So you working out on the Peloton too?
Trying. Trying. It's behind me. It's not collecting too much dust, but it's there.
It's as long as it's not a clothes hanger, then you're good.
No, there's no clothes on it. Not yet, at least.
Well, let's jump. That was helpful. And then as far as books that I was talking about, maybe not necessarily specific to this topic, but as far as any self-improvement, personal development, anything like that you're reading?
No, not reading. Maybe a couple of cookbooks here and there to better my cooking aspect, and trying. And my wife would definitely disagree on cutting back on the fat, but we'll see.
well, you're working on a really cool project that you're going to be back on Wednesday with another character.
That's a surprise, and that's to be continued.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. Let's jump into advance and pushing ahead. So advancing is to accelerate the growth or progress of, and to bring forward for notice, consideration, acceptance, and to move things forward or to proceed. So how are you navigating through these times? You had mentioned earlier about the teleconferencing or Zoom or Skype, etc. Do you foresee some of this stuff sticking around? And also, what are you doing to kind of put your foot on the throttle to kind of push this thing forward and advance forward?
Yes, this is going to stick around for a while, especially from our industry, because we're always looking at how do we cut down costs. Traveling to these sites and all this overhead that's involved, it all adds up to the cost of medicine. So yes, I could definitely see this taking on a bigger aspects, like, hey, we did it then, why not continue? We were still able to continue and keep the quality of the work there. So yes, I could see this definitely maintaining to some degree. There will always be a need to have that face-to-face, but maybe not as routinely. Maybe instead of being every 2 to 3 weeks, it'll be more quarterly. So we'll see how that works out and how our budgets change from that aspect. From a business perspective, I could look at it although I have no contribution to my community from this, I could advocate for the participation in clinical studies for healthy subjects and for those that are ailing from a disease or condition. We can't make new medicine without patients to volunteer with consent, with proper education to participate in these kind of trials. And that's we're not using anyone as a guinea pig, but we are helping to further educate ourselves, the furthering of development of medicine, and potentially make the quality of life of those particular volunteers better, and those that are treated later down the road better from what is currently available on the market right now for diabetes, oncology, various cancers. So it's important for us to ensure that clinical research, it's a big deal right now. People are talking about clinical trials as if it's been going on, just started. It's been going on for years and years and years and years. So we want to ensure that the awareness is out there. If you have something going on, and just do a Google search, clinicaltrials.gov, and it'll pop up where, if you happen to have IBS or anxiety or acne or a little bit of alopecia.
What about if you have a spotty beard and you can't really grow?
Hey, anything's possible. I don't have that one. I have a spotty head. So there's all kinds of different studies out there to research new drugs and new medicines to better the quality of life for our patient population and so forth. So one day we'll find the cure for everlasting life. We'll see what happens from there.
Still searching for that fountain of youth, right?
Exactly.
Well, you answered really the last question. What can people do to support your business? You really work with the medical community at large across the nation. So not just directly locally, but across the nation. But I think you just touched on it. How can people be a part of or help support what you do? Is really just, what was that website again? Clinicaltrial.gov.
So clinicaltrials.gov, and there's Center Watch, which it's a main repository of all the different clinical trials being done, whether it be locally, in your state, in this nation, and you could find, based on your disease or condition, and work your way down from there where the closest hospital or clinical site that's running a potential study that you may fit for. Not everything's going to fit, because each study is looking for specific criteria in their subjects and their patients. Not, as we've learned with the development of medicine, it's not any size fits all. It's definitely, now we're going down the targeting on their genetics, genetic targeting. So it's definitely working where a certain population, something for you may work perfectly if we have the same condition, but may not work for me. And that's where we have to start working on our diagnostic testings better. And from there, we can figure out, okay, this particular medicine will work in this particular group population, and this may work for another population. And instead of going through that road of, let's try this, let's try it, plan B, plan C, plan D, we can be more targeted in our treatment of patients.
That's solid information, and people, the best way to go is just go to those two websites to do that.
Yeah.
Well, in closing, anything that you want to add that we might not have covered, or that I might not have asked you, but you have on some of your notes that you wanted to be sure you go over?
It's this particular event has definitely shown that we, as a nation, as a people, we will be fine. Yes, there's a economic disturbance. There's a lot of people getting ill. There's a lot of people dying from this. But at the end of the day, we have to adhere to the necessary precautions. And people are start washing their hands again. I mean, believe it or not, I mean, something basic as that
blew my mind that people had to be reminded to do that.
It's sometimes the basics is where we have to start again.
Maybe we can work on turn signals next.
Hey, from your lips to God's ears. But yeah, it's definitely kind of take a simpler look at life. Take a review what are your priorities, and I think that is a big deal when we have a situation like this. I mean, granted, we can't sustain this, but it is a good way to look at it from the perspective of, you know what, let's readjust our priorities in life.
That's great. I think those are great points to end this on. And Mark, I want to thank you just for all that you do. And I look forward to seeing you in a completely different capacity on Wednesday. It's going to be fun. And if anyone needs to ask Mark any questions, just hit him up in the comments below. and he'll post up those two websites that he was referencing as well. Thanks so much for being on this episode number 11, and see you real soon, hopefully in person real soon.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. This is a great opportunity. I appreciate you sharing this.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.